Hello, I'm Tim Harris. This is Julie Harris, and this is Real Estate Coaching Radio.
That's right. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any future episodes. Thanks again for popping by. Hit that like button, and don't forget to leave your comments and questions so we can get right back with you.
We will. Thank you for continuing to make our podcast, Real Estate Coaching Radio, the #1 listened to podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. And let us know what you think about this video. Leave your comments below. Thank you.
Julie, do you think we have an interest rate problem or a lack of inventory problem in the United States?
We definitely have a lack of inventory problem. We have for some time, and there's no reason to believe that the world will start raining magic inventory on us anytime soon, in spite of all of the prayers of many realtors, brokers, and buyers.
I agree 100%. And if you want proof that there's not actually an interest rate problem, well, with that said, thankfully, interest rates are falling.
Yes.
But if you want proof that it's actually a lack of inventory problem, is look at the fact that even with higher interest rates, the average home in the United States still appreciated by, I think, what was it, 4 and sometimes 6 or 10%, depending on your market. Mm-hmm. So here we are coming, 2023 was the worst real estate market in certainly all of our professional lifetimes in the last 40 years. And don't know if you all knew that, but congratulations. If you lived through it, you get the t-shirt.
If you're still listening to this podcast, you have made it.
I survived the worst real estate market in history, and I only have this stupid t-shirt to show for it. Well, hopefully you have more than that to show for it. But listen, point being is we have an inventory problem. But what the statistics prove and should prove to you is there actually are far more homes for sale than what you're easily finding on the normal sort of easy button sources like the MLS. And so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be training you on the different ways to use your MLS specifically to find homes for sale. And there's a lot of this stuff sounds very wonky and nerdy and technical and analytical, and it is. But the fact is this is the type of information in a market like this that gives you an advantage.
That's right. Now, we have done dedicated podcasts showing you many, many different ways other than your MLS, both online and offline, to find inventory. But we also know that in spite of our best efforts with all of those podcasts and all those different sources, that the MLS still is your #1 source. Of course, that's where you go primarily. So here's the thing. Are you relying solely on that buyer drip you set up for your motivated and qualified clients? Has the drip run dry? It's time to get more creative, more aggressive, and more profitable with those MLS searches. So we're going to concentrate just using your MLS today. We've had, again, other podcasts using things other than your MLS.
And remember, like every day, our notes for today's show with all Julie's details are down below. So if you're on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or what have you, just open up the notes, hit more, hit details, whatever it is, and they're all down there waiting for you. And when you are there, you know what I'm going to say, longtime listeners. You've got to join Premier Coaching. You love this podcast. How do I know? Because this is and has been for a long time the #1 listened to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. We have millions and millions, tens of millions of downloads. And yeah, that tells me, it tells you that this podcast has a lot of value. And I love the fact, and Julie and I love the fact that you love it, but you won't believe the value you get when you join Premier Coaching, including free 30-day access to Premier Coaching for all of you guys listening right now. And all you've got to do is go to premiercoaching.com or scroll down and click the link to join Premier Coaching. And like I said, that does give you free 30-day access to Premier Coaching, which does include a daily semi-private coaching call with one of our Harris certified coaches. So do not delay. This is the information you need now. We will give you such things as your 90-day massive action plan, your real estate treasure map. A lot of the scripts we talk about on this podcast are waiting for you for free. So scroll down and click the link to join, or just go to premiercoaching.com.
All right, so before we drill down on some very specific strategies to better utilize your MLS searches, 2 quick facts. Fact #1, the longer you take to deliver what your buyers want, the less faith they're going to have in you. If you've ever been ghosted by clients that you've showed homes to, this may have been the reason. Are your buyers being more proactive than you are? Are they out door knocking for themselves, sending letters or cards themselves, going to new builds, for sale by owners, open houses? Well, you better get in front of that. So fact #2, finding the right house for your buyers in today's market is a bit like a safari. You're looking for something that's scarce, but could be hiding in plain sight. You'll need more tools and more skills to have the successful hunt.
So we're going to give you guys a little advanced secret. It's not part of Julie's notes, but it is a simple fact. A real buyer buys, a looker never buys, right? So if you find yourself showing lots and lots of homes to a buyer, they're probably not ever going to buy. And the fault lies with you, not the buyer, because you didn't pre-qualify them for their financial ability, for their, all the things that we teach you to do when you're in coaching, but it's all part of the pre-qualifying script. So when you go through those questions, the whole point of the script is for you, for the buyer pre-qualification script is for you to actually, discern what their level of motivation and interest and whether, frankly, they're financially capable and emotionally capable of buying a house. And also, it's going to help them to understand their level of seriousness, their level of intent. And so they might decide that, hey, guess what? I'm really not a home buyer in this market. Or you might decide, well, you know what? You might think you're a home buyer, but you're not working with me because we're not, I don't think you're that motivated based on how you've answered my questions. The point is that the more homes you show a buyer, the less likely they are to buy a house from you. And I want you to remember what I just said, from you, because here's what happens. And anyone that's been in the business for more than a heartbeat knows what I'm saying. Is that you are going to discover buyers who are going to meet you at open houses or just wherever, and they're going to say, I've been looking for a house for 6 months, 12 months, and I've seen 100 billion homes for sale. And you're going to follow one of our scripts, and you're going to find out, I don't want you poaching another agent's buyer, but you're going to find out exactly what they feel is going on. They're going to tell you that they are going to fire their agent. They've already fired their agent. Maybe they're somehow no longer attached to them. They haven't talked to them in a couple of weeks. But really where the error happened was that original agent did not actually help the buyer to focus in, drill down on what they were looking for in the area in which they were looking. And there's only a handful of really effective techniques and scripts and systems to really drill down with that buyer so they don't end up wasting a lot of your time. And I don't know how else to express it other than that. Just remember what I told you, listeners. If you've got buyers who you've been working with for a real long time and you've got so much invested at this point and you're going to ride that horse into the horizon right off the cliff, you might find yourself wasting so much time with buyers that really weren't motivated in the first place. You're not going to show them enough houses to then have them one day just wave the white flag and say, fine, damn it, I'll just buy that one.
They might be house enthusiasts. They're just getting decorating ideas. Who knows, right?
Well, I tell the story and it's true. When you and we started selling real estate, we sold over 100 homes our first year, but that doesn't really represent the number of people that we actually came in contact with that we attempted to work with professionally.
Sure.
It was 500, 600.
Many.
Because we didn't know how to pre-qualify.
Right.
But
we would
put all of our time and effort towards these buyers. And as you start to pick up, as you sell more houses, then your brain says, oh, what are the commonalities? It's almost subconscious.
Learn the lessons, right?
What are the commonalities? Almost subconscious learning that's going on. I noticed that all the buyers that actually buy don't want to look at more than maybe 4 to 6 houses. I've noticed all the buyers that actually buy show up for their appointments on time. The buyers that actually buy respond to me when I actually send them an email or a text. The buyers that actually buy have their loan stuff done, so they're actually pre-approved. In other words, real buyers actually have certain signals that they put out. You just have to know how to tune your frequency to learn what the real buyers and how they actually act like. Most of the buyers out there right now are not real buyers, and they will happily waste your time.
That's right. I'm glad that you drilled down on that. As you were talking, I had Rory's, our old broker's voice in my head. He used to say, they call them buyers because they buy.
Yeah.
And then he'd storm off. Early coaching, I suppose. All right. So let's keep on setting up your buyer drips. We know you guys are going to do that anyway, but also make sure that you are actively and creatively mining your MLS using the 5 strategies, starting with number 1, most important thing. Tim, you mentioned it. Re-examine your buyers' wants and needs. Use pre-qualifying scripts. What's a deal killer and what's a deal maker and why? If they're adamant about a specific neighborhood, why is that? Is it because they love the walking trail in the clubhouse? Well, there's probably 10 more neighborhoods in their geographic search that also have that profile. Expand their search to capture more options. This is a big mistake I see agents making.
Well,
why isn't your buyer in contract? Well, they're only looking on these 3 streets. Well, why do they love those 3 streets? Let's find something that meets those criteria that's maybe on a 4th street.
Jules, tell the story when we were moving to Austin.
Yes. Okay. So when we were moving to Austin, we had a fairly broad search. We knew Austin from going there a few times. And we said we wanted X, Y, and Z, right? Well, we were working with an agent there. And he was kind of getting close, but not really.
But he was only searching in the areas that he was most comfortable, and he was only searching in, when he was putting the areas in the MLS, he was putting these particular areas.
His stomping ground.
Exactly. And what Julie did,
another big mistake, by the way.
Exactly. What Julie did is she got into the MLS. She didn't even have access because we weren't licensed in Texas. And then she got into Realtor.com. And then she just expanded the search out, so he was probably using his house and doing a 25-mile radius around his house.
We curiously always ended up in Lakeway.
Exactly. Yeah. And so what Julie did,
which is a lovely area, don't get me wrong. But.
And so what she did is she pushed it out like 50 miles or something like that. And sure enough, right over essentially the virtual border of the circumference in which he had set his search parameters, right. Julie found the house that we wanted to buy.
It was like exactly what we wanted.
Exactly. And it was right there.
We literally bought it before looking at it.
We didn't even see it, right? All we had to do was, is maybe an extra 5 minutes away from the actual edge in which he was searching, literal 5 minutes, just right outside.
It's like a 30-minute drive versus a 20-minute drive.
Exactly.
From where he was centered.
So the point of it is that even if your buyers show up in your life and they're saying, we only want to live in this area, in this area, in this area, and you're going to
find out why.
You're going to find out. And I'll tell you guys a technique. Get a map, an actual map on paper. You can print it off. It's okay. And then ask them questions. And this is all part of our buyer system. And ask them like, where do you work? And then put a little star where they work. Where do you go to church, synagogue, or mosque? Where do you all the things, right? We love to go to this park. This is the place we love to shop. This is the doctor's office. This is the dentist's office. And what you're going to see is that most people, like you and everyone else, lives within usually no more than a 10-mile radius. Like all the things in their life is within a 10-mile radius.
That's their habitat.
Exactly. It's their bubble. Everyone lives in a bubble. Wherever you are in the world, you're living in a bubble. You can be in Paris, but you're living in a bubble. You can be in, Murphy, North Carolina, and you're living in a bubble. Your bubble, if you're rural, it's going to be more than 10 miles. It's going to be more like 30, but you get the point. And so what you then need to realize is that most people are never going to move outside of that bubble. That's the reason that they're saying, I want to live in this particular area, because everything around them is very convenient. So you want to show them the stars, and you want to say, so then again, these are all part of our buyer system. So where are the places you go every day? Work and this, kids' school. Okay, then you're going to put another star by those areas, and then you're going to show them that there's actually communities that are neighborhoods that are right outside of where they had sort of self-imposed this circumference of search, that maybe is just right outside, but still makes it so their drive is only 15 minutes versus 12 minutes to school. You guys get it?
Geographically adjacent.
So that's one of the questions. It's like, how long does it take for you to drive to work? Now, 15 minutes. Okay, 20 minutes. Or if you're in LA, an hour, right? So how long are you hoping, are you okay with driving maybe 20 minutes opposed to 15? Or are you wanting to, what's important to you? So I know where to look. And then you've got to ask these questions to help them self-discover all the different possibilities that they have by simply expanding their MLS search area. This is all part of our buyer system. That's part of Premier Coaching.
So spend more time drilling down, getting to know exactly what they're dreaming of. Why did they choose their current home? Assuming that they love it or used to love it before maybe they outgrew it, what caused them to choose that house? Probably that hasn't changed. Ask good questions, get the answers, and deliver. To Tim's point, look at the map. What is important to them? Even if they're relocating, they have a job somewhere. We probably want to live close to work. All right, number 2, if your buyers can't or won't compete for scarce inventory, again, it depends on what they're looking for. You've got to change your strategy. Search for homes that have 30 plus days on the market, 60 or 90 days plus as well. You're less likely to have to compete for those homes, and the sellers are likely to be more motivated to make a deal. Maybe there's a builder spec home that doesn't have 3 offers on it, something that's back on the market, or a for sale by owner that isn't getting showings. Change your strategy if your buyers can't or won't compete. Also, it's okay if it's time for them to wait.
Or if you have a buyer that shows up and says that they want to bludgeon the seller so they can somehow get a price that's unrealistic, you need to give yourself permission. There's more scripts, more questions you need to ask them. to find out why they're thinking that way. And sometimes it's because they're super payment sensitive, which means you need to help them understand different ways to get their payment down. We talked about that a lot in Premier Coaching and obviously on this podcast. But the moral of the story is if you have somebody that's just going to I'm not going to buy something unless I can get 30% off, unless you're in a market that's going to give someone a discount like this, which, by the way, you are not.
No.
You need to jettison that buyer because that's not a real buyer. That is a time waster.
Or adjust their expectations. Maybe maybe their grandpa told them, you ought to be able to negotiate at least 30% down. Maybe it's something that just they haven't thought of why they're saying that. Sometimes it's cultural. Sometimes they just don't have any reason. But more likely than not, they're wanting something that is more expensive than what they actually can afford.
Right. And they read something on or watched some YouTube housing crash expert, or they have their head full of,
I'll give you a perfect example of that. And this is a current headline. Prices are falling in 30 of the most active markets. Okay? So doesn't that make you want to lowball? Prices are falling. I read a headline that prices are falling. And in fact, it is true that about 38% of active listings will have a price reduction before they sell. But it's not by 30%. It's by like 5%. It's practically nothing. And it's because they started too high in the first place. So an uneducated or undereducated buyer client might think that that means it's time to lowball, or an unprofessional buyer's agent might think that it's okay to lowball. That doesn't mean that that's reality. So how do you know the difference? You look at what their expectations are and what they're hopefully pre-approved for, and you look at, okay, you want this, this, and that. Well, the past 10 closings have all closed at 99% of list to sell price ratio.
I'm glad you said that. That's where my mind is going.
Because that's a script, by the way.
Right, exactly. It's all part of our buyer system. But show them the statistics in the MLS of what the list to sell price ratio, the average days in the market. Assume that they're coming to you, most cases, with a bunch of misinformation out there.
Yeah.
And then you'll say to them, so the house is like what you're looking for, and the condition, location, whatever. They're all going to be selling, it looks like, for about 98% or 98% of the list price of the final list price, and the average selling price. Show them all the statistics from the MLS, almost like you're doing a CMA, and then ask them, if you were a seller and you had that access to that same information, why would you sell the house for less if you knew your house was worth that? Well, I'm looking for a deal. I'm looking for a bargain.
Well, if they stick to their guns on that, then it may be time to just break up, or, you're done. Okay.
Yeah.
But if they say, oh, I never thought about it that way, I wasn't aware of that, I thought I was supposed to negotiate. Well, then, you're doing your job as a buyer's agent to educate that client who probably will buy. They just need to have more information.
And if they're coming from a market, if you're in like a relo market, and they might be coming from an area where maybe it is, essentially homes are selling at a larger discount than basically nothing. It could be. You don't know. You're going to have to find out. But yeah, it mostly comes down to misinformation or,
ignorance. It's not their fault.
Yeah. Well, there's the bottom line. You can't blame the buyer for you not having done your job at the beginning of the relationship. That's the main thing. Before you start dating, you would at least want to read their, LinkedIn profile. Doesn't that make sense?
Right. Exactly. All right. So point number 3, look for new construction, even if your buyers don't think that they'll like it. Add one well-selected home at the end of a search for resale homes just to take their temperature. They may be surprised how much they like it. Considering it's all new, they get to choose some options and they won't have to deal with repairs. They probably won't have to compete. They probably will get a better mortgage deal and a better payment. You have to at least look into it in terms of new construction for virtually every buyer. There's only a few markets where that's not possible.
Well, yeah, but new construction, guys, new construction is going to own your market. No doubt.
It's already 30% of sales.
Why? Okay, because even if it's a smaller home, and has, a lot of these new construction homes, all the builders are doing is they're making them physically smaller and they're removing content, right?
Right. Or options, you might say.
Yeah, removing options. And now what they're going to start doing is making the lots smaller. And people are going to buy them. Why? Because the interest rates and the payments are going to be lower. People always shop payment. It doesn't matter whether it's an expensive car, an expensive trip to Disney, wherever the heck it's called.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter. People are shopping payments. That's how they think. So new construction, if it's anywhere near your stomping grounds where you're selling real estate, trust us when we tell you you've got to become an expert in new construction. We've done lots of podcasts about that, lots of obviously training in Premier Coaching.
Well, that's right. Okay, so point number 4, if you can't find something in the right school district, find out if that district allows out-of-district families to pay tuition. This is becoming more and more prevalent and ranges from $1,000 per year on up, depending on what you're looking at. Call the district enrollment advisor and find out. Often the tuition can be made up by the fact that buying out of the district costs less and has lower property taxes. I knew a couple of kids, I don't know if you knew that, I knew a couple of kids at our high school that their parents lived like way out there and they were just paying tuition.
Well, where my mind went was how many people, especially post-COVID, are doing homeschooling now, or how many are doing private schooling, or religious-based schooling. I mean, there's a lot of options. If the kids are young and they don't have any like attachments to the school or the other kids in their class, then you might want to help your buyers to open their minds to something other than the way they grew up. I mean, Zoe goes to a private school, but Julie and I both went to public schools.
Totally different than what our experience was.
It's completely different. What isn't the same? I mean, what is the same rather compared to even like 10 or 15 years ago? So your buyers might be stuck in a quagmire of outdated thinking, and you're going to have to help them, give them some options. Let them think, Julie, I had someone that was saying the exact same thing. They wanted to go to the, Worthington school system, Worthington school district. That's just where they were dug in. That's where they maybe had gone to school. That's what, that was it. No, do not show me a single thing outside of then what I did is I showed them some statistics. There's various websites that compare school systems to school systems. And, it's all the way to the number of students to teacher ratio, the age of the actual schools,
test scores,
the whole thing. And they were right. Yeah. Julie, 20 years ago, Worthington school systems were way better than any of the adjacent school systems. But I want to show you something. Now, this really surprised me. And then show them what the other school systems are actually doing, and then let them make their own decision. Let them also then consider you guys get the idea. You're going to have to help educate a lot of these guys if you're finding them essentially without available inventory. The inventory is there. The homes are there. You're just going to have to do more work to help them find the homes.
You have to be a lot more creative, basically.
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. Speaking of which, number 5, look at your own past client and sphere of influence list as if it's your private MLS. Who do you already know who owns a home that meets the criteria of your buyers? Does that homeowner know what the current value of their home is? If they did, what would that do to their plans? Who in your database just got relocated, divorced, needs to upsize or downsize? Who just had a third kid and needs to buy a 4-bedroom home? Be the matchmaker. I see so many deals from our coaching clients where they literally are the only reason that their clients are in contract.
Well, your bonus point 6, which you're about to read, it's hand in hand with really point 5. Because the reality of it is if you're looking for a great excuse to call people, right? And you're a little bit queasy about that. If you've got a buyer that's looking in a particular area and the buyer's hot to trot, pre-approved, ready to go because you followed our system, this is an actual home buyer, you will be shocked how, I think, really surprised and happy. A lot of the people that don't even have their homes for sale are to hear that there's still strong desire in their neighborhood. And then you can also then start a conversation. Well, have you considered selling sometime in the next 12 months or less? And you'll be really surprised how frequently they say, well, we are thinking about it. Well, we've got a house under construction.
We're going to move to Florida.
Exactly. Well, maybe we could advance your plans and move that, and then you don't know. You're going to put a deal together, or at the very least, you've got a great listing lead.
And you know what's the best about that? I love this from our coaching clients. When you put deals like that together, your buyer is not competing. It's great, okay? You're in control of the entire transaction, and most of the time you're creating a listing for yourself and the next transaction, at the very least a referral fee if they're moving out of state.
Exactly.
I mean, you're in complete control. It's one of the number one things agents complain about is they feel out of control all the time.
I'm going to actually add a bonus point to that.
Sure.
Go to the new construction home reps, and we coach you guys what to say and how to say it, but here's just a quick overview. Ask them of the houses that they're building for their new build clients, how many of those new build clients have homes to sell? That might be obviously an an avenue to get listing leads, but also it might be just even if that house is already maybe going to be listed with another agent that new build rep knows, you now have got advanced information about inventory that's coming for sale. Think out of the box. You can do this with retirement communities. You can do this with all different sources. Again, past podcasts and coaching and premier coaching. Julie's glaring at me because she doesn't want to be.
No, that's funny because you said that sort of bonus point. We always come up with bonus points. As you were talking, I'm glad that you mentioned that. The other surprisingly good resource, when somebody's really drilled down on a very specific building or a neighborhood, call the president of the HOA because they know everything about everyone. They know who is relocating, they know who has a second home. They know who has a rental property. They know who's behind on their property taxes. They know the whole thing.
We've done so much training on this podcast. But like, Julie's mentioning the HOA. She and I can go back and forth and share ideas with you guys for like hours.
Yeah.
But here's another one. There are a lot of you guys are selling in areas where there's a lot of VRBOs. How many of those VRBOs, if they knew what the price of the owners knew what the price of the value of the home would be happily sell the property? Sometimes the VRBOs are managed not by owners, by management companies. Do some digging. You can actually direct contact the owners of the VRBOs through VRBO or HomeAway, and you can then ask them if they thought about selling the house.
You can even tell how often it's rented.
Yeah, exactly.
Or not rented.
You can go into the history and find out if that, great deal down in Amelia Island in Florida that they bought as a rental during COVID has actually worked out. And you can see that it's only rented for 3 days. So, of the last year, and they've lost all kinds of money. So you can be sure, rest 100% positive that they will be very interested in a prospective sale. So open your mind.
All right. So thank you for that. Another bonus point, official point number 6. And we did one of our most popular podcast series ever was about door knocking of all things. Okay. Which surprised me. It's kind of old school, but it's very effective, and it's particularly effective in a low inventory market. So door knock the neighborhoods where your buyers are focusing. Leave behind a simple wanted flyer describing your buyers and their needs. Wanted your home for my pre-approved, highly motivated buyer clients who are looking only in the 12 Trees subdivision and need at least 3 bedrooms. Flexible closing date. So you're either going to talk to somebody at the door or you're going to leave behind that wanted card. Now, I'll tell you, one of the things that I have been, I don't know whether I'd say surprised, but I guess I caution you guys for your most motivated. And, in today's market where we have an affordability thing going, prices are high, rates aren't what everybody wants. The buyers who are really motivated and serious, they're so motivated that sometimes they door knock the neighborhood they want by themselves.
For sure. Well, how many of the buyers you're working with actually have homes to sell? How many of you are working with buyers, but you haven't actually pre-qualified them or asked enough questions to know that they're actually sellers that won't be able to buy until they have their home for sale? How many of you are working with buyers that actually might be interested in buying the house that another one of your buyers has to sell? You guys thinking outside of the box here?
Be the matchmaker.
This market is about being professional, knowing what questions to ask, following a system. Every single time when you're working and you're following our Premier Coaching system, when you're working with buyers, you're going to go through the same system. When you're working with sellers, you're going to go through the same system. Nothing is done by chance. Everything and everyone has the exact same experience. That's called running a real business. And then you start getting more consistent results. That allows you to progress mentally, emotionally, and financially 1 billion times faster when you're following a proven system.
That's very well put. And I have to confess something that agents that don't follow these types of creative inventory searches, I think that they're kind of contributing to the low inventory problem, because most of you are sitting on sellers who would sell if you could just find them something. How many times have you heard that? Even in the past, it's becoming 3 to 5 years of this very stymied inventory.
And it's not changing anytime soon.
We're very, very inching up just a little bit, not enough. And in fact, on our predictions podcast, we're going to quote the NAR economist Lawrence Yun, who said recently that we could double inventory overnight and we still would not be in a balanced market.
It's going to take at least a decade, and what's going to have to happen because the demand is just going to increase.
That's true.
We're just on the very leading edge of the massive amount of demand that there's going to be entering the market. And yes, millennials, I'm talking to you, right? So here's the thing. Until the baby boomers start letting go of their resale homes, until the new construction really starts to dial up, you're not going to see a turnaround in the inventory. We're going to be in what basically is a seller's market for conceivably at least the next 10 years. That means there's going to be appreciation, inflation on real estate in a meaningful way for at least the next 10 years.
Well, let me give you a quick example of how this can go, right? You guys are always frustrated. There's not enough in the MLS. We look in our favorite rental areas, and there's like 3 listings available, and 2 of them are in contract. That's been pretty typical. So where we live in Puerto Rico, there is no MLS. So how do transactions happen? It's almost 100% this type of thing where it's relationship oriented. Who do you know who knows somebody who is selling? Who do you know who's relocating in? What's going on with the new construction is a big thing. And probably 2 or 3 times a month, you don't see this because I throw them out the mailbox, but 2 or 3 times a month, I will get a card, not from a realtor, from a buyer, saying, I only want these neighborhoods. I'm sending cards out to everybody on these 3 streets. You know, if you're even thinking about selling, would you please just call me or email me?
Yeah, that's the new reality. And, you know, again, we're just at the 10 years at least. So if you're waiting and thinking that somehow rates are going to drop again, all of a sudden there's going to be
prices are going to drop.
It's not going to happen. This is what you've experienced we're just leaving the starting gates of what the market's going to be like, but that's okay. Because what it's going to result in is because you have developed the skill set and the mindset necessary for this market, and frankly, your competition largely has not, you will have an unfair advantage in the marketplace. This is your market because it's hard for everybody.
Yes.
This is your market because it's the worst real estate market in the last 40 years. So if you want to know what it feels like to be in the right place at the right time, it's how you feel right now. So take the next action and obviously become a premier coaching client. In the meantime, guys, thank you for keeping this #1 listen to daily podcast for real estate professionals in at least the United States. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And also remember to give us a 5-star review on iTunes and leave a comment as to why you love the podcast. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow.
Hello, thank you for having watched this video. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That's right. And don't forget to hit that like button, leave your comments and questions below, and we will get right back with you.
Thank you for watching this video. And remember to watch the next one. You're going to love that one.